One of the most interesting announcements in smartphones recently is the Moto Razr Plus, and the comments on my previous video seem to echo those same sentiments. While the idea of putting a larger screen on the cover of a flip smartphone isn't necessarily super new, it still moves the needle just enough that there is some excitement. But with a new paradigm comes some new challenges, and that's what I wanted to explore a little bit in this returning segment on my channel. Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? Here are my top 5 concerns with the Moto Razr Plus. Now, before we get started, a standard disclaimer. I'm not trying to rain on the parade of the Moto Razr Plus or on any of the excitement you might be feeling on what is a really enticing new foldable. It is not meant to convince you one way or another to get a particular product. These videos are meant to be conversational and to invite all of us to think sometimes a bit more critically about new releases. Also, this is a way for me to frame what will ultimately be my testing of the device once I get my review unit. And finally, I'm talking specifically about the Razr Plus in this video and not the regular Razr, which is coming later on this year. If you're excited to see what I get up to with the Moto Razr Plus, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you know when those videos come out. Durability and build quality are always a consideration when it comes to foldables since there are literal moving parts on the device. Let's not forget what the first generation of the Moto Razr had to go through, and it was a problem that plagued all foldables at least a little bit during those early days. The Moto Razr Plus this time around should fare just fine in those particular aspects, but because it is a new take on what makes a flip smartphone tick, it might be worth looking at this new phone as kind of a first generation product. Drastic changes like having that screen on the whole top cover means that certain things reset just a little bit. And I feel like that goes for ingress ratings, of which the Moto Razr Plus has one at IP52. Technically, that means that the Moto Razr Plus has pretty good dust resistance, but the second digit there means that the phone can withstand water hitting it from vertical to about 15 degrees off vertical, and that's about it. Really, the main point is that there's one word missing from that technical description, and it's immersion. That means that the Razr Plus is, for all intents and purposes, simply splash resistant, but anything more than that might actually cause some problems. This is not entirely surprising because on any foldable, it is kind of hard to really seal off the elements, but that's what happens when something new is introduced into the formula. There are concessions that have to be made in other areas, and I think that in the Moto Razr Plus, we're going to see plenty of places where that happens. After all, when a phone is all screen all the time, there are way more opportunities for scratches or even breaks. This is yet again not a new concept in the world of foldables because we certainly have devices like the Oppo Find N2 and the Galaxy Z Fold that are way more screen forward. And that's one of the joys of the Moto Razr Plus, I think, that the large fold philosophy is influencing the smaller flip form factor. It's almost like a hybrid of sorts, and we're getting something exciting out of that. That being said, part of the reason why a flip smartphone is so enticing is because the big screen experience can be more easily pocketable and ultimately a little bit more protected. The main big screen gets tucked away and sealed off from the elements, but then the same can pretty much never be said about the cover display. And that 3.6-inch POLED display is basically always exposed to whatever it might be next to in your pockets. It might be sliding on a table if it's set face down, or it might just be in danger of even the slightest scratches ruining an otherwise fun and interesting experience. I think we're going to end up seeing all over the place a lot of custom cut screen protectors now that this might be the way premium smartphones look moving forward. And I am talking about babying the cover screen to avoid scratches, but what if, God forbid, it just slips out of your hand completely? While the inner display is going to be protected by nature of it having a folding area, that outer display is in a much more precarious scenario. Bottom line, having this much screen all around just opens up more opportunities for something to get damaged. Now, I'm not typically a clumsy person myself, but I am concerned that it would just take one slip up, one drop, and disaster would strike. Another area where the phone had to make some concessions is in the battery life. This is a pretty simple compromise, easy to understand, but one that might still hurt a little bit. With the large screen experience up top, there had to be room made for that full-on touchscreen to actually work, and the result is less room for larger battery units, so we're left with 3,800 mAh in the capacity. I'm going to be somewhat optimistic and hope that Moto's software can actually help with battery optimization, especially since it seems that the Moto Edge Plus this year has been tuned pretty well for good longevity. But sometimes it's just math. A lower capacity battery equals less time off of the charger. And with a fully operational and pretty large screen on the cover now, it's possible that we'll have constant power draw leading to less than desirable everyday battery life. And it's not like the charging speeds instill too much confidence either. You get 30-watt wire charging, which is not bad at all, but if this phone is constantly thirsting for a top-up, I think some of us will be opining for faster charging speeds. I will say that Moto did a pretty good job of putting wireless charging on this phone, but even that is just at 5 watts. Alright, let's take a really quick break from all of the concerns and have a little bit of a tea break. Normally in my videos that have tea breaks, I start the video off by turning on a timer for the steeping time of the tea I'm drinking in that video, and I do that by using the timer in the device in question. That being said, I don't have the Moto Razr Plus, and this is a somewhat unique yet returning segment here on my channel, so I thought I would change things up with the tea as well. This is a really interesting one that I got from my favorite local market, Sprouts. It's called Hop Tonic. It is an Earl Grey, so there's some black tea in here, but then down here it says something really interesting. It is made with Yaupon tea. I looked it up just after getting these teas, and Yaupon holly is the name of a plant that is actually native to the United States, and it's the only plant in the United States that actually has caffeine content in the leaves. So you can end up making tea from the Yaupon holly, and even if it's not technically the same as the original tea plants that we would get in places like Asia or India, it's still our version of like an American caffeinated leaf-like beverage. And you know what, it's interesting to be able to try it out in this particular fashion. I mean, I just wanted something a little bit refreshing and something to use for this video, but now it makes me really interested to try out Yaupon tea. Which brings me to the reminder that I wanted to give everyone. Don't be afraid to change things up once in a while. Much like with the Moto Razr Plus, what we have here is a flip smartphone that's trying to change the formula up even just a little bit, and by doing so, it has captured the attention of a lot of tech fans out there. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be anything that drastic. It could be something as simple as doing what you have done for the longest time and just changing one little bit about it to make it feel fresh. And I feel like that's exactly what this tea is doing to me today. This is a sparkling Earl Grey tea, that combination I've had before, but now that I know what Yaupon tea is, and it's made in the USA, Yaupon, literally the plant is here, it makes me want to try it even more. So maybe that's what I'm going to let all of you know, is to just remember, mix it up sometimes. Try some new stuff out, try some new things, experience some new things, and maybe you're going to find yourself actually changing up the way that you do things on a daily basis just enough so that life feels a little bit more fresh. That can be true not just for your daily experience, but also for like work and whatnot, maybe trying something different with your content creation, and it might actually open your eyes to something completely new and exciting. Thanks for hanging with me a little bit in this tea break before we get back to our concerns, because I hope you come for the tech but you stay for the tea. Now, let's get back to the rest of the video. Which brings me to a couple of thoughts on the software and the fact that everything now has a second home on the cover display. By far the most exciting part about this flip smartphone is that it can be used without opening it up every single time. Plenty of apps, but not all of them, at least not yet, can be opened on the outer screen and used pretty much like normal. But that's not really true for every function. Some functions, like using the camera in the Instagram app, just didn't seem to work very well on the cover display. For the most part, that's not a bad thing, because you just open up the phone and you pick right back up on a screen that actually renders everything properly. What concerns me is how many times we might run into those situations. Moto has done a pretty good job of providing more functionality on the outer display, but what if it's just a solution in search of a problem? Coupled with the previous concerns I have with the durability and the peril of having all of that screen to protect, I just wonder how much of the extra functions a full cover screen provides will actually stick. I've already had fun with a few things like YouTube on the cover, having maps open on there for navigation, and I definitely want to have that big screen for a rear camera viewfinder. But what if all the other possibilities aside from that turn out to be more hype and less useful than I had hoped? That the rear camera viewfinder is so large might be worth the price of admission though. I'm really looking forward to using the Moto Razr Plus as a smartphone vlogging solution, and you can look forward to the results in a real-world camera test here on my channel. Despite all of that, my concern is regarding camera quality. This is not new, as we know that flip smartphones tend to have less in the way of optics compared to candy bar phone counterparts. What you get is a 12 megapixel main and a 13 megapixel ultra-wide macro hybrid, and that's what the cover display supports. And while Moto has done a good job with their photo processing in recent releases, I hope video will show some improvements as well. After all, Moto is really pushing these Razr phones on Gen Z and the content creator crowd. I'm sure it'll be great to use this foldable to record some good vertical video in those particular scenarios, but potential quality aside, the lack of a telephoto lens is an expected but still significant omission. I say this because I know a lot of people who are not techies constantly pinching to zoom on their phones, including the ones that don't have telephoto lenses. And if the Moto Razr and Razr Plus are going to be a bit of a renaissance and turned out to be really popular, and it makes it into the hands and pockets of many more people, I can just imagine those same people who zoom all the time, doing the same thing with the Razr and Razr Plus, and still wondering why their pictures aren't coming out very good. It's hard to explain why digital zoom is different from optical zoom when all these people want to do is to just get a far shot of their grandchildren or something like that. I get it, it's tough to get a telephoto on a flip smartphone, but ultimately it's still something I want to see one day. And so there you have it, my top 5 concerns when it comes to the incoming Moto Razr Plus. Even with these thoughts in mind, I'm still super hyped on the phone and I can't wait to put it to good use. So let me ask you, did you agree with my thoughts on the Razr Plus so far? Let me know in the comments. If you have any concerns to add to this whole conversation, feel free to share them as well. But from there, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again today. Please take care of yourselves and each other and enjoy your tea, everybody.